In this first problem, we're asked to solve. So first of all, we need to make sure everything's on one side of the equation. This here means we need to write this out twice. So that's the first thing you have to remember, and we've covered this before. So we have to perform FOIL there. So what is x times x? X squared, x times 2, 2x, 2 times x, 2x, and 2 times 2, which is 4. Please don't forget it has a 2 in front. We bring down the -3 and the 15. So in order for us to condense this, we need to combine like terms. So what is 2x plus 2x? That there becomes a 4x plus 4 minus 3 equals to 15. So the 2 in front of the parentheses, we're going to have to take care of it by multiplying. So we do 2 times x squared, which is 2x squared. 2 times 4x, which is 8x, and 2 times 4, which is 8. You still have the -3 equals to 15. Once again, everything needs to move over to one side, but first of all, we should be able to combine those two. We're going to slide this over. This becomes 2x squared plus 8x plus 5 equals to 15. The 5 came from the 8 minus 3. We have to subtract 15. Subtract 15. 2x squared plus 8x minus 10 is equal to 0. So now that it's equal to 0, we're done with all the parentheses. We have to try to factor this out. So all of them are divisible by 2, so I could factor out a 2. That means we divide everything by 2. 2x squared divided by 2 is just a 1x squared. 8 divided by 2 is 4. Negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 10. So this 2 stays there, but this here we have to break down into 2 parentheses. Now remember, how do we figure out what those 2 numbers are? We look for the factors of the last number, which is -5, that add up to the middle number, which is a 4. So the only way I could get a 2 is by doing a 1 and a 5. Because I need a positive 4, that means my 1 should be negative. So then my factors would be x minus 1 and an x plus 5. But those are factors the question says to solve. So please remember, you still need to set each one equal to 0. X minus 1 equals to 0. X plus 5 equals to 0. So x is 1. And x is a negative 5. Question number 2, we're looking for domain. Domain is x, and we're looking for range. Range is y. So my domains are all my x values in this function. So it will be -3, -4, 10, and -2. Please remember your x is the first number in each order pair. Your range will be all your y's. That means it would be the second number. 2, since I already have the 2 there, do I have to write it again? Nope. And a 4 and a 3. So that's your domain and range. So we have to describe the transformation from here to this one. So we've talked about transformations. If you have to graph it to see it, go ahead. But we've talked about the number in front. It's either going to vertical stretch or vertically compress. If the number is larger than 1, it is a vertical stretch. If the number is between 0 and 1, then it is vertically compressed. In this case, I have a 3. So because of the 3, the graph is getting vertically compressed by 3. The number inside determines if it moves left or right. Because it is a positive inside, the graph moves left 1 unit. The number outside determines if it moves up or down. Because it is a negative outside, that means it moves down 2. Keep that in mind. Number 4 is asking for you to add your functions. So by now you guys should have worked these out. Me going over them is just to make sure, so you can check your work, fix it if it's incorrect, because next time we see each other you will be taking your beautiful final. So when you're adding, we just write down the first function plus the second function. We combine our x's. So what is 4x plus a -7? Since they're different signs, we subtract -3x. Then we have a -3 plus 5. 5 minus 3 is a +2. And that's your final answer. You have to be careful with the subtraction, because everything that follows the subtraction sign, what happens? So please remember that negative distributes to your second function, so it's -g. This now becomes -11, and a negative times a negative becomes a +2x. -8x comes down, and the -7 is there. We are combining like terms again. -8 and a +2, different signs, so we have to subtract. 8 minus 2 is 6. Keep the sign of the largest number. So it's -6x, -7, and -11. They're both negative, so we add them, and they stay negative. And that would be your answer there. And the last one on this page, little dot means we have to multiply, so we have x minus 2 times 2 minus x. So once again, we're doing what we did at the top. We have to do FOIL. So x times 2, 2x, x times a -x squared, -2 times 2, -4, and then -2 times a -x. Negative times a negative is a +2x. We combine like terms, which would be these two. They're both positives, so that is a 4x, and then we have a -x squared. That would be a positive, and that's a -4. So please remember, you always put them in order from the greatest exponent to the smallest. So continuing on to number 7, when you have an absolute value, please, with an inequality, please remember you have to break it into 2 problems. One that's exactly the same, and the other one would be when we switch the inequality and make this a negative. So we're going to have 2 answers. So the first one, we add 4. 2x is greater than 10. Then we divide by 2, so then x is greater than 5. Then we add 4, 2x is less than a -2. We divide both sides by 2, and we get x is less than a -1. Those would be your 2 answers. If they would ask you to graph this in a number line, this is a -1. This would be the 5. Because of the signs, they would both be open circles. The x is less than, and the 5 is greater than. So there it is. That would be the number line. Now, for the next problem, we have y equals 3x plus 5. So we need to understand that we need to switch the values here. So this becomes x equals 3y plus 5. So that's the first thing. We need to know that your x and y switch. And then we have to solve for the new y. So how would I solve for the new y? Subtract 5, subtract 5. X minus 5 equals to 3y. But then we also have to solve, so we need to divide everything by 3. So we get y equals x minus 5 over 3. Or they might break that into 2 fractions, which is y equals 1/3 x minus 5 over 3. So whichever way they give it to you, whether it's like this or like this, it's the same thing. Now, to find the minimum values within an interval, please remember you have to use a graphing calculator. So we're going to go to graph, and I'm going to plug in negative 3x plus 2. And we're looking for the interval of the negative, so I have to get to the table, at a negative 1, between a negative 1 and a positive 6. So when I look at all the numbers between negative 1 and negative 6, my largest number, so I have 5, 2, negative 1, negative 4, negative 10, negative 13. So it seems like the largest number would be here at 1, negative 1. Oh, sorry, it's a negative 1. So negative 1, 5. So my maximum number would be negative 1, 5. Remember, sometimes they just refer to that one. My minimum would be 6, negative 16. 6, negative 16. That one right there. Now, use a quadratic formula. Quadratic formula, let's write it down. X equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So this is a formula. So I will look for a. A is 1, b is 8, and c is 9. So we have to substitute these three values into this equation. So x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So this would be an 8, this would be an 8, this would be a 1, and a 9, and a 1. So this becomes negative 8 plus minus the square root of 64 minus 36 divided by 2, because 8 times 8 is 64, 4 times 9 is 36. So if we figure out what 64 minus 36 is, that's 28. So this here becomes negative 8 plus minus the square root of 28 over 2. Now please remember, when you have a number like the square root of 28, this we could break down. So I'm going to come up here, negative 8 plus minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 7 over 2. Now the square root of 4 is 2 over 2. So negative 8 divided by 2 plus minus 2 square root of 7 over 2. Negative 8 divided by 2 is 4 plus or minus the square root of 7. So that right there would be my final answer. Now for the next problem, we have to use the ax squared plus bx plus c equals to y. And that's when we have 3 points. And please remember, this is x, this is y, this is x, this is y, this is x, and this is y. And we have to use the waffle in this problem. So please remember, so I'm going to do the first one. So a 0 squared plus b times 0 plus c equals to 5. So that is just 0a plus 0b plus 1c equals to 5. Next point would be a 2 squared plus b times 2 plus c equals to 3. So that's a 4a plus 2b plus 1c equals to 3. The next point would be a negative 1 squared plus b negative 1 plus c equals to 0. Negative 1 times a negative 1 is 1a. This becomes a negative 1b. 1c is equal to 0. Now, please remember that all these waffles, let me move this over, we make it into a waffle, and it would be for the first one, 0, 0, 1, 5, 4, 2, 1, 3, 1, negative 1, 1, 0. So where am I getting these numbers from? From the here 0, 0, 1, 5, 4, 2, 1, 3, 1, negative 1, 1, and 0. So here we go to the waffle, but remember before we go to waffle, we have to do, and I'm going to zoom in a little, hopefully it's clear. We'll go to menu, and we're going to do matrix, which is 7, and then we're going to do the number 5, RR, and then we have to do the waffle. Alright, it's right there. Now I have 4 rows and 3 rows and 4 columns, and then we enter the numbers that we have right there. So I have 0, 0, 1, 5, 4, 2, 1, 3, 1, negative 1, 1, and 0, and we press enter. And my answer would be the last numbers, remember? So A is negative 2, B is 3, and C is 5. So let's zoom this out a little. So A is that, B is that, and C is that. So that tells me my equation would be y equals negative 2x squared plus 3x plus 5. So there's my answer. Now, the next one, it says to solve by graphing. So we would have to solve each one for y. So I would subtract 2x, subtract 2x. So I get 4y equals negative 2x plus 12. Divide by 4, divide by 4, divide by 4. Y equals, that reduces to a 1/2 x plus 3. So this is the first one. So negative 2 over 4 reduces to 1/2. 12 divided by 4 is a 3. Next equation, x plus y equals to 2. The only thing I have to do is subtract x. So y equals negative x plus 2. And I have to graph both of those. So you grab your calculator, add a graph, and the first one is a negative 1/2 x plus 3. We press tab, negative x plus 2, and the lines are intersecting right there. Right there. So how do you find where the lines are intersecting? Well, we do menu, analyze graph, which is 6, and then where does it say intersection? On 4. So I would do 4. And you get a dotted line, and you go from there over, and I get a negative 2, 4. That is my intersection. So negative 2, 4. If you have questions about this, let Mr. Gonzalez know, and I'm sure he will run you through the steps. Menu 6, 4 to find the intersection. My answer would be negative 2, 4. Now the next problem, this stays the same. I multiply this by 2, and then I would combine like terms. 5 plus 10, 15. 4 plus 6, 10i. And that's my answer. That's all you do there. Next one. We distribute the negative, so the first one stays the same. This becomes a positive 5. A negative times a negative, it becomes a positive 3i. So what is 7 plus 5? 12. What is 1i plus 3i? 4i. Now the next problem, they want for you to write it in standard form. We're going to have to do what we did in the first problem. This square means it's x minus 4, x minus 4 minus 1. So we do FOIL. X times x, x squared, x times a negative 4, negative 4x, negative 4 times x, negative 4x, negative 4 times a negative 4, positive 16 minus 1. So this is an x squared, this is a negative 8x, 16 minus 1 is 15, and this is my final answer. Next problem. We do FOIL using the imaginary numbers. So we have 2 times 3, 6, 2 times negative I minus 2i, 4i times 3, 12i, 4i times a negative I, negative 4i squared. So I have 6, these two, we combine them, I get a 10i. Negative 4i squared, please remember I squared means negative 1. So 6 plus 10i, this now becomes a plus 4. These two numbers combine, 10 plus 10i. Now for the next problem, when they want you to simplify that, the problem with this one is you cannot have an I in the bottom. So that's when you have to multiply both top and bottom by a negative 4i. So if they give you a positive 2i, you multiply times a negative 2i. So when I do this, I have to multiply the top together and the bottom. I have 5 times a negative 4i, which is a negative 20i. 3i times a negative 4i is a negative 12i squared. And a 4i times a negative 4i is a negative 16i squared. What we have to do here is replace all the I squares with a negative 1. So moving this over, negative 20i minus 12, negative 1, negative 16, negative 1, negative 20i plus 12 over a positive 16. If we could reduce, we go ahead and reduce. All those numbers are divisible by 4. So negative 20 divided by 4, 5i, 12 divided by 4, 3, 16 divided by 4 is 4. And that would be my final answer. Next problem, because we only have an x squared, we need to move everything away. So the first thing would be to subtract 35. Subtract 35. 2x squared equals a negative 32. Then we're supposed to leave x squared by itself, so we divide by 2, divide by 2. X squared equals negative 16. And in order to solve for x, I need to take the square root of both sides. So x equals, the square root of 16 is 4. Because it has a negative, we put an I. Because we're solving, I has to be a plus or minus. So the square root of 16 is 4. Because of the negative, we put the I. Factor. What do those two things have in common? Can we divide both of these by 2 or both of those by 5? No. But this guy has an x and this guy has an x. So what's the most x's that I could factor out? 1x. So when I factor 1x, that's what you have left over. I had 3x, oh sorry, it's a square. So 2x squared times x, 2x cubed. Negative 5 times x, negative 5x. And that's all you could do there. And they just want you to factor, so that's where you stop. This one is where you start making the table. What are the factors of 21 that add up to a negative 10? So 21, 121, and 3 and 7. Because the 21 is positive, they're either both going to be positives or both going to be negatives, but they will both be negatives because my 10 is negative. So who gives you the negative 10? Those two. So my factors would be x minus 3, x minus 7. We're almost done here. Find the factors of x squared minus 9. Can we take the square root of 9? Yes. What is it? 3. X plus 3, x minus 3. This is the difference in perfect squares. That one's an easy one. So we're looking for the discriminant. Now, we've done discriminant, but we've never called it like that. The discriminant is the b squared minus 4ac. It is what's inside of your quadratic function, the square root. So my a is 5, my b is 4, and my 2 is my c. So I have 4 squared minus 4 times 5 times 2. So this is 16 minus 5 times 2 is 20. 20 times 2 is 40. 16 minus 40 would give me a negative 24. So that would be my answer. Now the last few questions, they're going to be open-ended. So you're going to get single numbers. This next problem we could also do with the waffle. So they're already in the right order. So this would be 1, negative 1, 1, negative 1. 1, 1, 3, negative 3, 2, negative 1, 2, and 0. So we have to do the waffle for this problem also. So I'm going to move this over. Let's turn this thing on. And I'm going to go into calculator. I think I just turned it off. So new document, we go into calculator. Remember it's menu, 7, and number 5. We do the waffle, there it is, 3 rows by 4 columns, and we enter the numbers that we have here, which is 1, negative 1, 1, negative 1, 1, 1, 3, negative 3, 2, negative 1, 2, and 0. And I press enter, and they're only wanting the y value. So the y value would just be this number here, the 2. So this is x, this is y, this is z. So I just need the 2. 2 would be my answer. Right? That's it. Now the next one, we multiply, we do FOIL. What is 4 times 4? 16. 4 times a 5i, positive 20i. Negative 5 times 4, negative 20i. Negative 5 times a positive 5, negative 25i squared. So these two eliminate, 16 minus 25 times a negative 1. Now, 25 times a negative 1 is a positive 25. And then we add those together, and I get a 41. What two numbers multiply to 9 but add up to a negative 6? 1, 9, 3, 3. They're both negative, so I have x minus 3, x minus 3. Set them, since they're asking for a solution, they want them equal to 0. And they turn out to be the same answer. So as long as you put a 3 as your answer, that's it, you're done. And the last problem there would be that you are looking for the y-intercept of the graph. So when you look at this graph, the y-intercept is this point. So it is 0, negative 8. Of course, it's just going to ask for one number, so my answer is negative 8. So please see this review as much as you have to make sure that we know what we're supposed to do for the midterm. Good luck on it.